In a dramatic escalation of Middle Eastern tensions, Qatar has convened an emergency Arab-Islamic Summit in Doha on September 14 to 15, 2025, following an Israeli airstrike that targeted Hamas leaders residing in the Qatari capital. The attack, which occurred on September 9, 2025, in the Lektafia district of Doha, resulted in the deaths of 5 Hamas members and a Qatari security officer, Badr Saad al-Humaidi al-Dosari. This strike, executed by at least 15 Israeli fighter jets launching over 10 precision munitions at a single target, has ignited widespread condemnation across the Arab and Muslim world. Leaders from various nations, including representatives from the Arab League and the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, OIC, have gathered to formulate a unified response to what they perceive as an act of aggression against a sovereign state. The summit, described by Qatari officials as a decisive moment, aims to address not only the immediate violation but also the broader implications for regional security and peace efforts in Gaza. The airstrike targeted a meeting of Hamas's political bureau, including figures like Gaza chief Khalil al-Hayya, who were discussing a U.S.-sponsored ceasefire proposal aimed at ending the ongoing Gaza war. Hamas confirmed that while 5 lower-ranking members, including al-Hayya's son, were killed, senior leaders such as Khalid Meshal and Zar Jabaran survived. Qatar's government, which has hosted Hamas's political office since 2012 at the request of the United States to facilitate indirect negotiations, labeled the attack state terrorism and a flagrant violation of international laws and norms. The incident occurred in a residential complex near schools and foreign embassies, raising fears of civilian casualties and further destabilizing the Gulf region. This event marks the first publicly acknowledged Israeli strike on a Gulf state since the onset of the Gaza conflict in October 2023, shattering perceptions of Qatar's immunity due to its hosting of the Al Udeid Air Base, the largest U.S. military installation in the Middle East. The summit's agenda includes drafting a resolution that condemns the strike, calls for accountability under international law, and explores measures to protect mediators in future peace talks. Qatari Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdulrahman Al Thani has vowed a collective response, emphasizing that the attack undermines Qatar's role as a neutral broker. Funerals for the victims were held on September 11, 2025, at Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul Wahab Mosque, drawing thousands and amplifying public outrage. As delegates arrive, the atmosphere in Doha is charged with a mix of grief and determination, with social media footage of the explosions circulating widely, fueling calls for unity. Pakistan, a key player in the region and a vocal advocate for Palestinian causes, has been at the forefront of the condemnation of the Israeli strike. At the United Nations Security Council (UNSC) emergency session on September 11, 2025, requested by Pakistan, Algeria, and Somalia, Pakistani Permanent Representative Asim Iftikhar Ahmad rejected Israel's actions, emphasizing that the attack was a violation of international law and an affront to Qatar's sovereignty. Ahmad's remarks were fiery. It is unacceptable, indeed ludicrous, for an aggressor, an occupier, a serial violator of UN Charter and international law, that is Israel, to abuse this chamber and disrespect the sanctity of this council. He accused Israel of perpetrating the worst kind of state terrorism in Gaza and the occupied territories, rejecting comparisons to the 2011 U.S. raid on Osama bin Laden in Pakistan as a false equivalence. The Pakistani delegation's firm stance has resonated deeply within the Muslim world, positioning Pakistan as a potential leader in any retaliatory measures or diplomatic pushback. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif visited Qatar shortly after the strike, meeting with Emir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani to express solidarity and reaffirm Pakistan's support for Qatar's territorial integrity. Sharif described the attack as unlawful and heinous, a brazen violation that endangers regional stability, and called for the Muslim Ummah to unite against such provocations. Pakistan's Foreign Office spokesperson Shafkat Ali Khan echoed this, urging the international community to hold Israel accountable. This position aligns with Pakistan's historical support for Palestine and its role in OIC forums, where it has consistently advocated for resolutions against Israeli actions. At the UNSC, the Council adopted a statement, backed by all 15 members, including the U.S., affirming Qatar's sovereignty and urging de-escalation to safeguard Gaza ceasefire talks. The prospect of Pakistan utilizing Qatari warplanes in a retaliatory strike against Israel has been a topic of intense speculation, particularly on social media and in regional analyses. While no official statements confirm such plans, reports suggest Pakistan has offered military support to Qatar, including potential use of its JF-17 Thunder fighters or joint operations with Qatar's expanded air force, which recently acquired advanced platforms like Rafale jets. Such an action would mark a significant escalation, potentially drawing in other regional powers and altering the strategic landscape of the Middle East. Analysts note that Qatar's air defenses, including U.S.-supplied Patriot and THAAD systems, failed to detect the Israeli munitions, possibly due to long-range missiles fired from outside Qatari airspace. A retaliatory operation could involve Pakistani pilots or intelligence, leveraging Pakistan's experience in counter-terrorism and its close ties with Qatar, which employs many Pakistani military personnel. However, logistical challenges, such as the distance between Pakistan and Israel, would require aerial refueling, which Pakistan lacks in sufficient capacity, making it a high-risk endeavor. Speculation intensified after Israeli warnings to Qatar and Pakistan to expel terrorists, prompting Pakistani social media users to assert that the Pakistan Air Force could intercept any Israeli incursions. The implications of such a move are profound, as it could lead to a broader regional war with unpredictable consequences, including disruptions to global energy supplies from the Gulf. Should the Muslim world collectively decide to take military action against Israel, the strategic dynamics would shift dramatically. Nations like Iran, Turkey, and Hezbollah could become directly involved, providing support to Palestinian factions and launching coordinated attacks against Israeli targets. Iran, already engaged in proxy conflicts, might escalate missile strikes on Israeli infrastructure, building on its recent attacks on Al-Udeid during the Israel-Iran 12-day war earlier in 2025. Turkey, under President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, has condemned the strike and could mobilize its NATO-capable forces for joint operations, potentially closing the Bosporus to Israeli shipping. Hezbollah, having lost key leaders like Hassan Nasrallah in prior Israeli strikes, might intensify rocket barrages from Lebanon, aiming to overwhelm Israel's Iron Dome system. This coalition would likely aim to disrupt Israeli military operations, target strategic infrastructure such as ports and airfields, and challenge Israel's technological and intelligence advantages through asymmetric warfare. Pakistan's involvement could extend to providing tactical support or even deploying assets to Gulf bases, given its nuclear capabilities and history of alliances with Arab states. The summit in Doha may discuss forming a joint command structure, similar to past OIC initiatives, to coordinate responses and deter further Israeli actions. However, internal divisions, such as Gulf states' fears of Iranian entanglement, could hinder unity. In response to such a coalition, the United States, as Israel's primary ally, would face a critical decision point. The U.S. has historically provided Israel with military aid exceeding $3.8 billion annually and political cover at the UN, but an all-out regional conflict could strain these relations. President Donald Trump has previously distanced the U.S. from Israeli actions that contradict American interests, such as the strike in Doha. In a heated phone call with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu post-attack, Trump reportedly called the operation not wise, emphasizing that it occurred on the soil of a key U.S. ally hosting 8,000 American troops at Al-Udeid. White House spokesperson Caroline Leavitt stated that the strike does not advance Israel or America's goals, and Trump directed Special Envoy Steve Witkoff to warn Qatar, though the notification arrived too late. Trump, who received a $400 million Boeing jet as a gift from Qatar earlier in 2025, has praised Doha as a strong ally, and met with Qatari Prime Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdulrahman Al Thani in New York to discuss de-escalation. This indicates a potential shift in U.S. policy if the situation escalates further, possibly involving diplomatic interventions, sanctions on Israeli officials, or back-channel negotiations to de-escalate tensions. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance expressed frustration, noting the attack hinders hostage releases, while Secretary of State Marco Rubio is set to visit Israel to reaffirm support but temper extremism. The U.S. joined the UNSC condemnation, a rare move that underscores the strain on its alliances. Analysts warn that Gulf states, questioning U.S. protection after the undetected strike, may seek alternatives like enhanced ties with China or Russia. The international community's response would also play a crucial role in shaping the outcome. Organizations like the United Nations and the European Union could mediate peace talks, impose sanctions, or provide humanitarian aid to mitigate the impact of the conflict. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres condemned the strike as a flagrant violation and called for a permanent ceasefire in Gaza. The EU, through leaders like UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, has urged restraint and criticized the violation of Qatar's sovereignty. Countries like Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Malaysia have expressed solidarity with Qatar, with Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman calling for an Arab, Islamic, and international response in his annual speech. The UAE summoned Israel's deputy ambassador, denouncing Netanyahu's remarks. However, the effectiveness of such interventions would depend on the willingness of all parties to engage in dialogue and compromise. Past efforts, like the 2023 and 2025 ceasefires brokered by Qatar, Egypt, and the US, show mediation's potential but also its fragility. Broader global powers, including China and Russia, may push for multipolar solutions, while economic sanctions on Israel could target its tech sector to pressure compliance. In conclusion, the Emergency Arab-Islamic Summit in Doha marks a pivotal moment in Middle Eastern geopolitics. The decisions made in the coming days will not only determine the trajectory of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict but also reshape the alliances and power structures within the region. The involvement of Pakistan, with its strong condemnations and potential military support, the prospect of coordinated action from Iran, Turkey, and Hezbollah, and the strategic calculations of global powers like the United States under Trump will all influence the path forward. As the situation develops, the world watches closely, aware that the choices made now could have lasting implications for regional and global stability. A unified Arab-Islamic front might deter further aggression, but failure to act decisively risks emboldening Israel, potentially leading to strikes in Turkey or Egypt. Ultimately, de-escalation through renewed talks remains the best hope, but the shadows of escalation loom large, threatening to engulf the region in unprecedented turmoil.